Yeah, I think it's not what people initially expected. I think that everybody kind of thought this was going to be a rich get richer. Duke's going to go pick off every great Mountain West player, and Kentucky's going to go take every great Missouri Valley Conference player. Well, that's not exactly what's happened. If you look at the college basketball landscape, it's a new world for these coaches too, right? The transfer portal is really only a year or two in its form right now. It's really only into year two that you can do these instant transfers, that you can do as much transfer recruiting as they do. And so coaches are kind of taking a different stab at it. A lot of coaches are now ignoring the freshman class at all or entirely, which maybe more of them go the junior college route or even a Division II route, hoping to get seen a year or two down the road, because some schools just aren't going to recruit freshmen anymore. Now, what that allows for is maybe a Donovan Dent would have been higher on some teams' boards a year ago, but those teams were now saying, no, we got to reload right now with transfers that have done it at the Division I level, and we know they'll be available. So coaches are kind of looking at this in different ways. Do you just load up on the transfers and get the immediate Morris Udeze, Josiah Alec kind of impact? Or do you go for the freshmen and hope, just cross your fingers that they stay with you for 2 or 3 years and they're good as sophomores, juniors, and seniors? You're rolling the dice a little bit there. Coaches don't have a lot of time really to wait for player development. We're in an era now where good for players. They have the opportunity to go find the best situation for them.
It sounds like from what you're saying that there's potentially a lot of benefit towards maybe mid-major programs, and that's a way for them to compete with those traditional programs in a sense, if they're still very focused on like the top freshmen coming in. I mean, I assume they're going to be big in the transfer game as well. But how do you kind of see this playing out so far from the small sample size we have, like across the country and in college basketball at large?
Yeah, I think it's not what people initially expected. I think that everybody kind of thought this was going to be a rich get richer. Duke's going to go pick off every great Mountain West player, and Kentucky's going to go take every great Missouri Valley Conference player. Well, that's not exactly what's happened. If you look at the college basketball landscape, there's a whole lot of blue bloods out there this year that were struggling, that didn't necessarily attack that transfer portal as well as New Mexico did, or as well as maybe some other Mountain West schools did. So I think just like it was before, good coaches, either at the power in basketball, it's power six. So at the power six level in basketball, there's going to be some good coaches there that attack it just right and kind of find the right mix. There's going to be some good coaches at the mid-major level, at the Mountain West level, at those levels that attack it just right. But I don't think it actually adjusts the scales in the advantage of the power six any more than it did before. I just think that the coaches have to figure out the right mix, because there is going to be an interesting mix. And like I mentioned with Donovan Dent, maybe he ends up at UNM anyway in the pre-transfer portal world. But I do think that there are some power conference schools now that they don't want to even mess with freshmen. They don't have the time to let a freshman develop 1 or 2 years. So if you're not getting a top 25 5-star freshman, or maybe a top 50 kind of freshman, there might be some Dukes of the world and Kentuckys that back off those guys and don't even recruit them anymore, because they know they can go get that 4-year player out of Siena or something like that was just a great player and needs 1 year to show his NBA stock. They know they can go pick off some of those guys. So maybe they don't recruit freshmen anymore. And as a result, you see the Lobos just landed a 4-star shooting guard who did have some high major offers. But he knows he can come here and probably get some minutes pretty quick.
What have you seen as far as the impact of NIL and how that is playing? Is there any sort of benefit to being like the big fish in the small pond compared to being, I would assume the NIL deals would still be bigger in one of the Power 6 conferences, but is there any sort of advantage or unexpected things you're seeing with NIL so far?
Yes, sort of. To be honest, so far, I think eventually we'll get back to what we thought it might become, which is programs with a ton of money and a ton of boosters are going to be able to get better players, right? But so far, it really hasn't been the case. You can see two programs that have done really good NIL-wise are Boise State and New Mexico. Now, those are kind of – Boise State competes with football, obviously. But they got a couple car dealerships there that are like leasing cars out for their entire college career to players. They got, things going on there that, if you're telling me I'm a college player or I'm a college recruit coming from back east or anywhere in the country to Boise, Idaho, but I know I got a pretty good car for 4 years, like that's a big perk right off the bat. You got stuff going on here with the 505 Sports Venture collective in Albuquerque that they're doing pretty good. Look, Donovan Dent's a guy that I think schools are going to come out and covet. He was on a trajectory where I thought, like, for sure people were really going to come at him. He's leveled off a little bit. That maybe that helps his chances of staying. But he also has a really good relationship with UNM, and I think the NIL guys know we got to take care of him. This is how you compete at this level. Whereas I still think eventually the rich get richer in this regard probably will be true. Right now, I'll tell you, Kurt Roth, the guy that runs the collective here, he thinks this is what gives UNM a chance. He knows that UNM in the Mountain West won't be able to compete with a Kentucky budget or a big power conference budget. But basketball needs only a handful of players to be really good, right? So why not throw all your eggs in one basket and get a couple of really good players and show them the love, not just in the pit, but like with a little bit of spending cash for walking around money, I guess. And some of them get a little more than just walking around money. But they can probably, in their mind, here at a place like New Mexico, maybe they can get that one piece or two piece that puts them over the top.
Thinking along the lines of the transfer portal and potentially just how chaotic that could be at any time, for someone to be jumping ship to a different team. Do you see any sort of reasonable outrage out there or pushback that could lead to changes in those rules?
I think the biggest change is already starting to happen where they have to let the schools be more involved in it. Initially, they were saying we don't want the schools involved. They can't be involved at all. But then they realized, well, that doesn't make sense. How would a collective in Albuquerque, New Mexico, know which recruit to offer how much money to, or how would he even get connected with that recruit unless he was acting in some way as a booster? So the schools can now coordinate some of it. They can't write the check. They can't spell out the dollar amount. But there needs to be some involvement with the school. Now, the worry there is then once the schools are back involved, the reason they didn't want them involved initially is because then the schools can get in trouble if there's some tampering and cheating going on.
Exactly.
You need to have a certain level of that. So that's kind of, we went from it's not allowed. Okay, now NIL is allowed, but schools can't be involved. So then we kind of jump down to here. Now we're inching back up to where the school involvement does then kind of put them at risk a little bit. And that's okay. I think the schools have to be involved to a certain amount. Now we'll see which schools kind of are the ones behind maybe tampering more than they should and stuff like that. But look, it is going on. I'm well aware of a few cases already where handlers and parents have been reached out to and said, hey, I think this NIL deal at this other school would be pretty good. Some of that stuff's already going on. But guess what? It was actually going on anyway. It was going on before anyway. So I think we're at a spot now where the schools have to be involved at least a little, but I don't know how much.